Hey, Jeremy here. Welcome back to the channel. Today I've got an exciting guest, Tom Stasek from Tulsa. Tom's a realtor and a real estate investor. I'm very excited to have him on the channel today. So welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Jeremy. Love all your videos. Big fan, as you know. And also, I always appreciate your insight and helping me with my real estate journey.
Thank you. So Tom has been a big part of helping me with this channel. He's got some experience with YouTube. He's got a channel or two, just a big part in the background that you don't see. Tom, thank you so much for everything that you've done and continue to do. So thank you.
Sure, it's fun. My pleasure.
Okay, so Tom was chatting with me this week about an investment property that I wanted to talk about. He is actually an investor. He bought a new home and he rented out his previous home. And let me ask you about that quickly, Tom, before we get into this investment property. The house that you used to live in that's now your first rental property, did you do that on purpose or was that on accident?
Well, I fell in love with the real estate investor game. I had unintentionally been a landlord in the past and rented out a house I owned for a couple years. And so here I was living in a house I built with a builder in 2012, wanting to get involved in real estate without necessarily the capital to really dive in head first, and also a house that my family was outgrowing. So it wasn't intentional, it was kind of accidental, but then it was intentional that I turned it into an investment property and bought another house. And it's been a great experience so far. I know not everyone has the best experience, but like I said, in my mind, it was probably too nice to be a rental, but I just charged a premium and it's turned out really well.
I've got some of those as well. What I tell people on the channel is your best first rental property is generally the house you own, the house you're currently living in, if you do happen to own one. A couple of simple reasons why is that the 30-year fixed loan, you can get on those in cash flow. You can almost cash flow most houses that are on a 30-year fixed loan, assuming you have great credit and a great interest rate, right? They sort of take care of themselves. And as you move into investment loans, which we'll talk about in a minute, that becomes a lot harder. Also, you don't have to bother selling or fixing one up and having some of those associated costs, things like that. But it's a great transition. Landlording is not for everyone. So there's some folks that kind of fall into it. They were trying to sell it maybe and they couldn't, or they just rented it out to a friend or family. And that's something I actually don't recommend. If it's not something that you're interested, I mean, you might want to try it out, right? But it's not something that anyone should just do lightly. You should take it very seriously.
I'll add this to what you're talking about. I work with a lot of newbie investors. In fact, literally was on a phone call prior to getting on this with you, where newbie investors don't even really think of this option, but it's a great option for the reasons you just outlined. Here, I'm somebody who's a little past the newbie stage. I'm working in real estate. I have a rental property, yet we found ourselves in a conversation where you were educating me on this process of getting a loan for an investment property, which, now that I understand this better, I'm even doubling down on having my new investors look at turning their current property into a rental property first so that they can get in the next one with little capital and better loans.
I do the same thing with my newbie investors. I love coaching people, and it works better when you're younger. If you can live in the house and turn that into your rental and just repeat that to get those 30-year owner-occupied loans, to get those super great interest rate, to get those tiny little 3 or 3.5 or 5% down, none of that is available to investors to get an investment loan or a commercial loan down the road if you're not going to live in the house. And that's how this opportunity that Tom's going to talk about here is the situation for him. If you're not going to live in it, it's not going to be all those good things. The whole loan is going to be a lot worse. So we'll talk about that in a second. And I think, Tom, if you don't mind sharing, I think that was a surprise to him, like he's saying, even though he's a guy in the business, that kind of came up. He's maybe heard it, but it didn't really stick or didn't come together, right? Thank you so much for the overwhelming support of the channel. And thank you for the 10,000 views on one of our recent videos. Please help us reach 1,000 subscribers by just clicking the subscribe button. It's completely free. Don't forget to smash the like button and leave a comment that says AirPods for a chance to win a pair of AirPod Pros that Liz is giving away to one of our first 1,000 subscribers. You want to jump into the rental property opportunity?
I reached out to you because I was trying to figure out your advice on what the best way to go about this is. It's a house essentially I can buy for $55,000, well under market value. Yes, it needs some work. And the question for me was, do I spend my capital on buying this with cash, or do I look to get a loan, kind of leverage my risk in that regard? And you were great about kind of laying it out for me about the advantages and disadvantages of going about that. And I think it's important that this is of real value for this video is clarifying this, because I'm a disciple of bigger pockets. I've read the books, I've watched the YouTube. In my mind, I've heard, hey, I can get a Freddie max, I can get up to 10 of those, and I can have 30 properties with 30-year loans. That's been my mindset. And now, and I've met with commercial lenders who were talking about 20-year, 25-year loans, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to mess with those. I'm going to go the 30-year loan route. And you really clarified for me that's not an option if I'm putting 20% down and I'm buying an investment property. And that has not been clear from my education. Even though I may have heard it, it has not been clear to me.
That's one thing about education is, there's a time when you're ready for this stuff, and there's some details that you kind of may not notice. By the way, I've maxed out that 10 Freddie Fannie loans along my journey, and then I had to start getting into commercial loans and experiencing those much worse terms and conditions. I mean, it's still good. You can still make money. On the early days, it's nice to be able to cash flow a lot with those 30-year mortgages and lower interest rates to help you get started. And then when you kind of get down the road from a portfolio perspective, that'll help you to afford the ones that are on the 20-year loans. This house you're talking about is a buy and fix up, otherwise known as the BRRRR method, the buy, rehab, rent, and refi. And that's kind of what Tom's thinking about doing this. So he's going to be a landlord. A lot of people don't like that part of this business, but in my opinion, if you want to wealth build, which is my goal with real estate, then you actually have to be a landlord. Or you could hire someone to do that for you. I would recommend doing it yourself first so that you understand it before giving it away. And I've got around 25 or so houses, maybe a little north of that actually, with the 4 I have under contract currently. And I'm able to do that and still manage another company. With today's market being so difficult, people say I can't find a good deal. My opinion is there aren't good deals out there. You have to make a good deal. And in order to do that, I'm finding that I have to do these BRRRR deals. I've got to find something that's not a pretty house, right? That I've got to do some work on. You mentioned this was single family home, 1,290 square feet, 3 bedroom, 1 bath. You're going to turn it into a 4-2, a 4 bedroom, 2 bath.
Yeah, that's what, so we could, this is a new version of this conversation that we can dive into. So right now I just got, I had a contractor go out there and give me an assessment. It needs a new roof. AC unit isn't working. Those are obvious needs, but, and the bathroom basically needs to be gutted. But there's an opportunity here where they've built on a garage and then converted that garage into a bedroom and then added a laundry room. I'm crunching numbers on, is it worth turning this into a bathroom bedroom? And now we've, like you said, going to a 4-2. But I think my feelings, and this is where I want your input, is I'm going to take care of the obvious major things like I listed off, plus paint, redo some flooring, which is necessary. It's needed to rent, a new window. But the question, and I've told him, here's the variable. We'll look to do that depending on where we're at on those costs, then decide if we're going to turn this into a bathroom. I have the potential to knock down a wall between the living room and the kitchen. Probably not necessary, but my thought is if I do this right, I may get a better tenant. Depending on the costs, we'll determine if I do this, is it going to be $20,000 before we get to that point? And what are your thoughts about kind of a wait and see approach versus no, send them in, do it all, bite the bullet, and go this route?
Great questions. I think you want to make a simple spreadsheet. On my last video, I kind of show how I do that, just something real basic, especially with you having a contractor instead of paying your guys per hour like I often do. You can really just spreadsheet that out and say, here's what I'm going to have in it, what I think my after repair value is based on the dollar per square foot they're selling for in that area. And you've actually calculated that and told me. But just see if you'll end up with some equity on the end. You need to, right? You want to finish that project and have some equity. And then you can also calculate what your cash flow is going to be based on this loan that's only going to be a 20-year loan. You will put 20% down or 25 depending on what the bank will give you since it's a commercial loan instead of that 5% down 30-year amortization you were thinking about. But look to see how that cash flow looks too.
With that being said too, I have an interest in, really this is going to be my first true investment property that's going to require rehab and these things.
Yep.
And I'd rather take that on at $55,000 rather than the $155,000.
Yep.
So it's kind of getting my feet wet, and you kind of said, hey, look, you're going to get through this and realize, hey, that wasn't that big of a deal, but it feels like a big deal right now from the position I stand.
What I like about this is that it's a small house. I like small 3 or 4 bedrooms. It's only, call it 1,300 square feet to remodel. If you can find a 3-bedroom house that is 5,000 square feet, you've seen those before, right? You don't get as much rent if you have a lot more space. If I were to graph that, it kind of slopes off quickly. But you have to pay for every square foot you buy and rehab and maintain. And so for that reason, I like a small 3 or 4 bedroom. I think you should absolutely do the second bathroom. people expect 2 bathrooms, and not even like a 1.5, but a full bathroom, okay? Close in a carport if you have to. People would much rather have a second bathroom and another bedroom. A lot of times I feel like people want 3 bedrooms in like an extra room, like an office with everybody working from home. And so I think that it doesn't have to be a proper bedroom, but some other space. But turning it into a 2 bathroom, 4, I think is a great idea. Like, absolutely. And then your other thing about, should I knock down this wall and make it kind of more open? I would say if you're doing as much as you're doing to this, it's a pretty major rehab, and you're doing flooring, now is probably the right time. I haven't seen the numbers, and it will cost you a little more. If it's a buy and hold, I think over time people will just like it better and stay longer. It'll be more livable, if you will.
Yeah.
And people tend to stay in places like that. If it's got popcorn ceiling, this might be a time to get rid of that too. And if not the whole thing, at least the front room when you come in and the kitchen, like sort of that area at least. I like to do that. One of the things you're doing here is you're creating a cash flow. You're making a golden goose here is what you're doing. You know, on my little houses like that, I'm making something like $750 a month on my 3 little houses like that. They have some of the best cash flow, more so than a house that costs twice as much. Even if you don't have a giant amount of equity when you're finished, I think you're going to have this golden goose that will buy you a car for life.
So Jeremy, let me share this with you, and maybe we could do a follow-up video down the road. So a couple of things here. You know, the numbers that I crunched, I'm watching houses sell in this neighborhood, and the livable ones are getting $70 to $90 a square foot. The really fixed up ones that have 2 bathrooms are getting $100 a square foot. So that would put me, and I don't think the garage is considered in my square footage, so this could essentially be over $130,000. This is where it'll get interesting, and I haven't brought this up, but I reached out to a local bank, and they've told me, we will give you, you had kind of pre-warned me that don't expect to get too much out of the refinance, because they're going to look at what you spent on the house and what you rehabbed it for. And typically, you know, it's kind of a struggle to get that back out.
Yes.
Well, he's basically telling me, well, if you buy a house for 50 and you put 20 in it and it's worth 120, we are willing to give you up to 75% loan to value. And based on the numbers I was giving him, he's like, oh yeah, you'll get all your money back out of it.
Yes.
I'm like, well, like confidently, like not, you know, because, and I understood what you were saying. You're kind of warning me, like, hey, they're not willing to just dole out money here. But it made it sound like I may even get more out if they can prove I did work and it's going to appraise at this value.
You'll hear Grant Cardone and guys talk about this, and I think for newbies it kind of blows their mind to hear this. And let me back up a second. One of the questions you asked me the other day about this house was, should I I've got enough cash to buy it for cash, and I also have enough cash to remodel it with cash. Should I do that and use up all my cash, you know, capital, cash reserves? What if a rainy day comes? Or should I just go get a loan now and pay for my repairs or whatever? Similar to what I'm hearing that you heard from this banker, is that my banks have taught me, if you can afford it, if you have access to cash. It could be a line of credit you have on your personal residence is a great way to do it. Or even if you have a 401k at your work, you can oftentimes go get a loan that way to get capital. If you can buy a house with capital, that's the name of the game right now. That's how I'm buying all mine. That's how I bought 4 last year and 6 this year, and to win the deals. You can buy them a little cheaper and you can actually win the deal. But my bankers have taught me, buy it for cash, rehab it with your cash, and then bring it to him to finance. Otherwise, between the banks and the appraisals, you won't get as much money back. When you're done, they will value the house on what it's really worth in the market, regardless of what you paid and regardless of what you put into it. So exactly like what you said, the banks will do a 75 or 80% loan to value. If you walked away with more than 20% equity in the house after you rehabbed it, and a bank gives you an 80% loan to value loan, you will definitely walk away with more cash than you have in it. One thing about commercial loans that's different from a 30-year fixed loan that you might have on your house is that not only are they just 20 years at best, but actually it'll probably be a 5 or 10-year balloon, even though it's amortized over 10 years. And so that means every 5 or 10 years you've got to redo the loan again, which will cost you a lot of closing costs. So that's something to consider. if you have an option of going to a 5 or a 10-year term on the loan, you'll get a better interest rate for the shorter one, but you'll have to repeat that again in another 5, if that makes sense. So keep those things in mind. It's a lot of hassle too. Hey, just real quick, Tom, if you were to look in your crystal ball 5 and 10 years from now, and maybe that will depend on how this house goes, right? How many houses would you like to see yourself have over the next 5 years?
My intentions are, and part of why I'm a real estate agent was because I wanted to be more involved with real estate, learn quicker, because I do have a goal to have 10 houses.
Okay.
You've set a high mark, and you've been at this a long time. But yeah, my goal is to have 10. This is my first year being a real estate agent, and my goal for this year was to have 1 new property. And so this has put me right on track for that goal. And hopefully with this experience under my belt, I'll be able to do more next year.
I love it. I tell people, just think about getting 10 houses. I'm not saying you'll be filthy rich, but you'll have a comfortable life and a comfortable retirement. I think that's a fantastic goal. After doing this YouTube channel, people have asked me about my goals and that sort of thing, and it made me do some thinking. And I've decided that I'd like to have $10 million of real estate under management, And after I finish with the 4 acquisitions that I currently have under contract, I'll be at 9.5. I'm getting close, so I need a couple more.
Yeah.
Being a realtor and working with other investors, what are a couple of nuggets that you've learned from investors that you have paid attention to, want to do more of, or want to work towards, that kind of thing?
I've realized that every investor kind of has their own different approach to things. And that's been that's part of why I'm in this position of being an agent. I get to learn from a very different variety of sources. There are some who are looking to own them outright and just dump their cash somewhere. There are others who are looking to leverage. There are people looking specifically at cash flow. I'm really learning from all of them. I'm trying to be patient and figure out my place and how to move forward. And obviously this situation is presented to me, which I'm comfortable moving forward.
Cool.
I'd like to buy another house in the neighborhood that my first rental's in. It's a little bit nicer neighborhood, but there's some opportunity to get some lesser houses in that area, which I'd love to jump on. So, I don't know if I answered the question, but I'm kind of learning from all of them, and they all have different approaches, and I'm trying to make my own.
I think for the younger people, leverage is better, and as you get older, having more in cash or having sort of less of a loan on it probably makes sense. And some people have their own philosophies on not liking debt and that kind of thing. For me, I really try to tell people that real estate is in fact a leverage game because generally it goes up around the rate of inflation, and nothing sexy about that, right? But it also is a good store of wealth. So for me, it's putting as little down and buying as much as you can. I'm trying to ride this inflation wave that's coming. And the more assets that I can control with as little money down and using the bank's money, I'm just gonna ride that wave. And so that's what I'm personally doing, so.
I'm with you. I'm more the rich dad philosophy versus the Dave Ramsey philosophy. I understand both, but
yep.
I'm more
Me too.
Rich dad.
What's one of your favorite business or real estate investment books?
Well, I think you got me started on The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. I read that a few years ago. Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. That's not so much real estate, but that's just, kind of sales and negotiations.
Wasn't he like the FBI negotiator or something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes. Hostage negotiator.
Well, Tom, thank you for your time and all your help with the channel. Look forward to hearing about this. Maybe we'll have you back and do a post-mortem on this property. Thanks again.
Yeah. Hey, my pleasure. I'm always happy to help. Love the channel. And you can check out my channel because what I'm going to do if I buy this property is I'm going to document my journey. This will really be my first BRRRR. I'm sure there's probably some of your followers who would probably be interested to see really a newbie get after it. And
cool.
I'll be taking your advice. So they'll be probably recognizing that.
If you're looking for some out-of-town investments in an affordable city, Tom specializes in working with investors. He can help you to buy a house in Tulsa and also kind of help with some of that management rehab stuff. So check Tom out for that as well. Tom, hope you have a great day, sir. Good luck with your closing today.
Thanks. Appreciate it. See you.
All right. Talk to you soon.
There's a bunch of products I use when I rehab all my houses. I've also got a group of book recommendations, smart home products, and office gear. You'll see this Amazon store right here. Although I'm a licensed CPA and have 3 business degrees, own more than $7 million of real estate, and have more than $50,000 a month in rental property income, I'm just a guy on YouTube with my dog, so please be sure to contact your professional before making any investment decisions. We post weekly, so be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out. Until next time, I hope you have a great week.
IdentityGuard.com is now offering my subscribers a 33% discount on their services. See the link in the show notes below.